Okay, live. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Scrutiny Commission for Charnwood Borough Council. There are a number of things I would like to remind people before we start with the items on the agenda. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council's website following this meeting. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the control of the Council. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask that everybody present to please turn off their mobile phones or switch them to silent and ensure that your environment is distraction free. And can I remind everybody that this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. Thank you. As this is a virtual meeting, it will be run slightly different. The new norm. Members will need to introduce themselves and state their names and confirm that they can hear and see proceedings. This is important for the purpose of recording attendance and transparency of the meetings. I will do this by undertaking an alphabetical roll call. Members will use the raise hand features in the participants section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so on a queue system. Councillor Bolton, could you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bolton here. I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks, can you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings? Councillor Brooks.
Councillor Brooks is not here yet. So
okay, thank you. Councillor Grimley, can you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Grimley here. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Haj-Nicolau, can you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton, can you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm I can hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Ransom, can you confirm that you can see and hear the proceedings?
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you. And myself, I can confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings. Right, I would like to now announce the officers that are in attendance and the councillors that are in attendance this evening. The other councillors are Councillor Jonathan Morgan.
Good evening, Chair. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Jenny Boker, lead member of Loughborough. For Loughborough.
Yes, Chair, I can see and hear you.
Okay. I understand that Councillor Lee Harper will be attending the meeting later. Councillor oh, hello.
Thank you, Chair. I'm back from the vet in time. Sorry.
Right. That's all right. Perfectly all right. Welcome. Councillor Shenaratre.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Officers in attendance today are Rob Mitchell, Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Eileen Mallon, Strategic Director of Housing, Planning and Regeneration and Regulatory Services.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can see and hear proceedings.
Julie Robinson, Head of Neighbourhoods and Communities. Sylvia.
Yeah, I can see and hear the proceedings.
Sylvia Wright, Head of Leisure and Culture.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Alison Simmons, Head of Strategic and Private Sector Housing.
I confirm I can see and hear the proceedings, Chair.
Matt Bradford, Head of Cleansing and Open Spaces.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Peter Oliver, Head of Landlord Services.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Kevin Stanley, Leisure Centre Contract and Business Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Victoria Kumba, Community Covenant Development Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Mike Roberts, Communications Manager. Oh.
Did you get that?
Was that you, Mike?
It was. Can you hear me?
I can now. Thank you. Stacey Simpson, Communications Officer.
Thank you, Chair. Can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Matt Goodger, Information Development Manager.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can hear and see proceedings.
That would be good, because if it wasn't, that wouldn't be working very well, would it? Karen Widdowson, Democratic Services Manager.
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings. Thank you.
And Sally Watson, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see.
Thank you. Are there any apologies for this evening?
None tonight, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes from previous meeting on the 6th of July 2020. Can I ask each member verbally, it says here, that they have received and they have noted the minutes and they are confirmed. So Councillor Bolton. Councillor Bolton, have you had the minutes and can you confirm? You need to unmute yourself. Thank you. I think I saw the lips move there. Councillor Brooks is not in attendance. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Carge Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm I have received the minutes and I have no corrections. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that I received the minutes and can confirm the minutes.
Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I can confer that I've actually received the minutes and they're right office. Okay.
And I also confirm, and the chair that says that they've all confirmed. Thank you very much. There's no disclosures. Sorry. On to item 3 now. Disclosures of pecuniary interest. Have we had any? Nope. Declarations of party whip, there's none to be reported. Item 5, questions under scrutiny committee procedure 11.7. There are no questions submitted. Right, item 6, community recovery cell update. Can I ask Eileen Mallon to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Apologies for such a big report. I know from our last meeting with Scrutiny Commission members, you were interested to understand how we've been dealing with the COVID recovery in relation to our work programme themes. So the thing with the community recovery is it's so extensive, it covers obviously virtually every area that the council works across. And there was a lot of things that we had to cover, hence I've put in the 2 work strands for you, the 2 work programmes, the live one and the one that we had previously that we've now archived, just so committee could see the scale of the actions that we were taking across all of the strands. I've got a short presentation, Chair, to assist. I don't intend to go through the whole report, but I have highlighted a few things on a short presentation, updating some of the numbers and just drawing out some of the points which I thought committee may be particularly interested in.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So Sally's going to do the arrangements for moving the slides on. So as contained in the report, when we started up with our recovery for community, we looked to badge some of the actions under 4 main themes that we thought were appropriate. The first one was to try and make build on the actions that we were doing to build stronger communities and make sure that all those ties weren't lost subsequently as we moved through the crisis. Obviously the environment and working around all of the spaces, both in terms of open space, play space, living space, and of course the workspaces was important. Making sure that everyone in the community was able to access all of the information and know where to get help was important. And we also felt that looking forward, when we do emerge from the rigours of the COVID crisis, that we build on all the good things that have happened, because there are some positives to take. So we badged everything under those 4 themes and put together a work programme working through things in terms of recovery, but also as things emerged. And I think it's important to stress what a dynamic kind of area this was, because obviously as things developed over the months and as things from government in terms of new legislation and new actions, we had to build those into the work programme. So hopefully if you've had a look at the archived work programme, you'll see how we work through that and how we had to respond very short notice in a lot of instances to some of the things that were emerging for us. If you can put the next slide, Sally, please. So the key areas that we were working on in relation to community recovery, I've listed there. Obviously, parish and town councils were important. There was a whole raft of things that came out for us to do in relation to homelessness and rough sleeping. The Charnwood Community Action Hub, as detailed in your report, was set up working across the voluntary sector, being led with both John Storer House and council officers. We wanted to support our vulnerable tenants, but also vulnerable residents. So there were some challenges for us there about making sure we understood who they all were. And if we didn't know, making sure that those who were vulnerable could access us. Obviously, there was a focus on leisure, culture and events that we had to pick up. Parks and green spaces became increasingly important, particularly during lockdown, and for people to get out and exercise. And one of the main themes that, you know, I haven't really covered in detail in the report, because the report could have been 3 times as long, quite frankly, is around communications. So that is one of the areas I'd like to focus on this evening in the presentation. So just picking up the first of those highlighted bullet points, Chair, we felt at the outset it was really important to make sure that we had access and support for our parish and town councils. So what the council did was identify a dedicated officer to support parish and town councils in the form of Vicky Coomber, who's with us this evening. And Vicky did a great job in working closely with parish clerks, and you'll see some of the things that she led on there, which was obviously making sure they had all the emails, bulletins on what was happening for all the councillors. We shared the government guidance, but also importantly our interpretation of guidance, because clearly the officers in the Borough Council had some of the expertise, so we were able to ensure that our colleagues in the parish and town councils were able to build on that and interpret some of that guidance on their behalf. You'll also see there we've had some quite low level issues, but those were important. So everything from dealing with issues with bins and rubbish clearing to social distance and floor markers, and supplying the installation of new cycle racks in 6 of our towns and villages to enable cycling into town centres and village centres, which we did with our parish council cooperation and support. Next slide, please, Sam. Thank you. We also worked with the Association of Leicestershire and Rutland Association of Councils, so collectively raising issues, getting responses of any queries that were being raised across the county and sharing that best practice and information. We identified hotspot locations in the villages and towns to make sure that social distancing measures could be identified and implemented. We felt it was important for people to be able to commemorate lost loved ones, so we shared our policy and updated that on how to put forward memorial trees in the name of loved ones for those who couldn't do funerals to the extent that they may have wished. We also shared information about grants, potential funding opportunities that our parish council and town councils could access. and we offered support and advice in relation to street furniture cleaning, and that was particularly relevant for things like play equipment. One of the other areas that took a lot of resource, and we are still working on actually, Chair, so this hasn't finished and is likely to go on for some time in terms of the Borough Council's responsibilities, was homelessness. And you'll see there that since the 23rd of March, we have placed 89 people in accommodation. 20 rough sleepers, or those at imminent risk of rough sleeping, currently remain in our bed and breakfast or emergency accommodation at present. These are the latest figures as of Friday, and we've got 7 of those in interim accommodation in the council's housing stock. During that period, we've also assisted 22 families with accommodation, and you can see there the difference in what we've been dealing with. We would normally expect to be dealing with 2 or 3 rough sleepers in any one given period in normal circumstances. So there was a huge difference in the amount of people that came to us for assistance during that period, and that we are still trying to assist as we move forward. So the next slide just updates you on the community hub. I have put details in the paper about the community hub and all the things that it was doing. And this was a fantastic effort with all of our voluntary sector and the Borough Council. And you can see there the numbers that the community hub has been dealing with, assisting shielded cases from Leicestershire County Council, the number of vulnerable people that we've been in contact with, over 1,000 of those, over 10,000 food parcels delivered to those in need during the period, and also over 300 people supported through befriending services. There was a great voluntary movement across the borough under the auspices of Loughborough Against Corona, which quickly mobilised during the pandemic and was brought into the community hub to support that initiative. And you can see there their activities. They've got nearly 1,000 volunteers. They've dealt with over 1,000 requests for assistance, and also they've referred people to other agencies for support. So they're the latest numbers, and as I say, the details of what the community hub has been working on throughout are included in the report. So the other area we looked at in particular was supporting our vulnerable residents. Now, obviously we've got 5,000 properties over in the borough. So we were able to identify our vulnerable tenants and those in our sheltered and lifeline accommodation. We targeted particularly those tenants who were over 70 and living in sheltered and lifeline accommodation, and over 430 of those were over the age of 80. We made around 950 calls to those. But also we needed to identify those not in that type of accommodation. So we looked across the tenancy register at those living independently, and also made calls to those. And you can see through those numbers, altogether we've made around 18,000 calls across the period to our vulnerable tenants, around 1,300 calls a week. Obviously, we were conscious that not all of the elderly vulnerable people would be tenants. Some would be living in private rented or their own accommodation. So we tried to identify these through a trawl of electoral registered information, and then utilise any contact details that we had. And through that route, we were able to make contact with 900 residents through the Lightbulb team situated in strategic and private sector housing, to make welfare checks and offer advice and support. And from all these calls that we were making to our residents, we referred 111 of those to the community hub for support. So that was definitely a worthwhile exercise. In addition to that, Leicestershire County Council referred the category 4 shielded. So these were the low level people who they weren't assisting, who were advised to shield, and they referred them to us for welfare calls, and the community hub coordinated that and made a further 1,700 calls to all those residents who were shielded and that Leicestershire County Council couldn't make contact with. So there was lots done around making sure that our vulnerable residents over 70, or those vulnerable for medical reasons, were offered support and signposting to services that they might need. I think it's important, Chair, to highlight the role that our comms team played in all of this. Clearly, there was a lot of activity going on. A lot of advice and information was coming out, often all at the same time to households. And we needed to ensure that as far as possible, residents in Charnwood were given timely and clear information. So the first thing that was done was we issued a letter to all the households in Charnwood from the leader and the chief executive, advising on where help could be found and where support could be found. The comms team created a community information pack and information that was put on the website so that people could easily and quickly access that information, and that ranged from everything from individuals to businesses. We sent, as you can see there, 86 community related bulletins to our subscribers, 10,500 of those, issued dozens of press releases across all the local media, hundreds of social media updates across all the various platforms, handled the enquiries and made statements, and obviously updated the website. And as you can see, I think hundreds is not an exaggeration. So it was a very, very busy time for our comms team. Some of the things they did specifically around making sure that residents could access support. Obviously, the Charnwood Community Action and the Hub was particularly important to get that out there because it was something slightly different to what people who were in receipt of support may have been used to. So it was important to rapidly develop the brand and get that out to the public, ensure that there was a clear message around that launch, showed the number of partners because there was a range of partners working out of the community hub. Also making sure that the key milestones and the hard work that was going on, they were recognised, and you may have seen some of the promotions that were done around the parcel deliveries with videos and photos and all sorts of innovative things to make sure that that message got out. Recognising the voluntary effort that was made across Charnwood, and there was some brilliant voluntary work done and lots of people volunteering to offer support. And also just picking up some of the more quirky things like the 11,000 donuts from Greg's, which I know went down very well, Leicester City delivering some of the food parcels, and also a lot of donations from a range of companies. And it was also important to make sure that we shared all of this with colleagues and members. So hopefully you will have seen some of this coming out as we went through the process. I think in terms of community facing, the other thing that it was important to do was acknowledge the role of our key workers, NHS workers and care workers. And we did put up a book of thanks to the NHS on the website that people signed, and we'll be able to pass that on. And you can see there the social media posts for that reached 41,000. So I think that was well received. And also recognising our volunteers. So next slide, please. So it was important to recognise the efforts of the community. So we put up this You're a Star awards, if you like, and that reached 57,000. Some positive feedback on that. You can see an example there with Rowlands Academy, just recognising what they've done. So there was a lot of positive coverage, and we did feel it was really important to recognise all of those efforts that both individuals and organisations were making across the community. Just a list of some of the other things that the comms team were doing, Chair. So obviously updating the website constantly in relation to the government guidance to try and make that as clear as possible. Updates on the garden waste collections, the parks when they were open and closed, when the open spaces were open and closed. Obviously inviting people to come back to the High Street and Loughborough Market, making sure there was reassurance around that and when that was open, describing the High Street helpers and our stewards and how we did that. We did put some online content to mark VE Day and the Armed Forces Day, because we were aware, obviously, that a lot of communities, especially in the elderly communities, weren't able to do that physically. So we tried to put things on that was able to at least commemorate that. There's been a lot on it in the report, a lot that the sport and active recreation teams have done around mental and physical health awareness, putting a lot of things online to help maintain both mental and physical health for people in their own homes. We put a lot of advice and information on around antisocial behaviour, because obviously with a lot of people indoors and self-isolate, and just encouraging people to think about their neighbours, making sure they were aware of, unfortunately, the scams that were going on, updated on the different cycle racks, bike safety and other things. And I would say, Chair, I've only touched on a few of the things that you'll find in the report. There was a lot of things that we did around parks and open spaces, leisure, the cultural events. So all of that is in the report. You will have noticed that I have invited all of the heads of service and those responsible to the meeting this evening. And that's mainly to cover any questions that the members may have. There's been so much done, it just wouldn't be possible for me to have fielded all those. And clearly there's been a lot of work done in those services. And I think I like to say that they've done a fantastic job over the months, in my view. And I think they've responded to every challenge that we've had thrown at them. So hopefully that gives you the flavour. But if members would like any more detail or anything particular from the report, I'm sure either I or any of my colleagues who are on the Community Recovery Cell will be more than pleased to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Eileen. You must be quite proud of your department.
All of them, Chair.
Sorry?
All of them.
All of them, you must be. I mean, I when reading the work plan, I was amazed at the scope. You called it dynamic, it certainly is. And the ongoing work that's involved in this as well. And there doesn't seem to be one element that the council is involved in that hasn't been considered as to the impact that it makes on the residents of Charnwood. So as a work plan, and I think it's very full. So, and that's, I'm saying that very loosely. It's extremely well covered, the whole aspect. So well done. Is there any questions that you would like to ask any councillors, please? If you'd like to raise your hand.
It's Councillor Bolton here, Chair. I raise my hand.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. I'm looking desperately for them, but yes. Thank you, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you. Eileen, I'd like to reiterate what the Chair has just said. I think your team and all the staff at the council have done an amazing job during these very, very difficult times. And your report was great. It was really comprehensive. And I only have one question as a result of that. You've done a great job with vulnerable people, and a number of people in my ward have actually said to me how much they've appreciated the calls that they've had. And I just wonder, is that going to continue? Because I think, you know, people may have sort of got used to having the regular sort of calls to check up on how they are. So I just wonder whether this is something that will continue as we go forward, because we're absolutely, as we know, not out of the woods yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think our view on the community hub is that we will support that into a transition phase now for as long as we need to. Julian and her team are working on a transition plan for that, to make sure that support doesn't just come to an abrupt end. So we are conscious of the fact that people have come to rely on that support. So as part of that transition plan, we are looking at ways that we can, and part of our building a lasting legacy was around identifying some of the positive things that have come out of it and seeing how we can support that. So although the community hub will probably reshape, it is looking at how they can continue to provide some of those services that we know some people have come to rely on. So certainly we are looking at a transition plan for that. In relation to own tenants, obviously a lot of the calls that we make come through the Lifeline system. So those calls will be continuing because we do regular calls through that system, and that is open. The Lifeline system is open to people who aren't resident in. So private sector residents can access the Lifeline system. So if anyone has got relatives who are vulnerable for whatever reason, then if they want that assurance ongoing, then certainly we can look at provision of Lifeline for anyone who is in particular need, and then they'll have that reassurance that there will be some of that support ongoing for them. So I think the answer is we are conscious that withdrawing things abruptly is not going to be helpful. We are conscious that we may need to gear up again. And one of the things as an SMT and management team we're looking at is making sure that we've got provision in place. So if we do need to gear up again, we can mobilise very, very quickly. We do have a lot of good practice to build on. I don't think any of us anticipated becoming skilled in responding to a pandemic, but we are now. So we will be able to build back up if we need to the levels that we've been doing since March. I hope that helps, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I want to first of all agree with both what Councillor Seaton and Councillor Bolton have already said. The report is a very substantial report, and it reflects the sheer quantity of work that the officers have done. They've done a magnificent job, I think, and we would be very proud of that achievement. I want to just focus on one question, which is on the rough sleepers and homeless. Now, I know that's been a particular challenge, particularly because many of these individuals have all sorts of associated challenges. Now, there's 20, I think, still in emergency accommodation, I think you said. And I know that the government has asked councils to kind of support these people to move on. Do you know if there'll be additional funding to help councils do that?
Could I ask Alison Simmons to come in there, Chair, please?
You certainly can, Alison.
Yes, we have still got 20 people in bed and breakfast. We're hoping that 2 will move out this week, and we've got 4 possibilities of accommodation going forward. The government has announced their Next Steps accommodation programme, and we've had a couple of meetings now with the MHCLG advisor, because it's a co-production bid that we have to put forward. We're not just awarded money, we have to put a bid together, and we're also working across the county on this. In fact, I've had another meeting this morning, and there are 2 lots of money. So if I just explain that first, there's 105 million revenue funding that has to be spent by the 31st of March, and that is where you can't say you had below 10, you're very unlikely to get any money from the government. This is the feedback we've had. Because you should be able to, within your own resources, find accommodation. Obviously, we're over that figure, so we're in a position where we can put in a bid, but jointly across the county, again, we could put a larger bid and we could all collaborate and benefit from it. So that's the first amount of money, and that could be something as simple as having a support worker that helps with outreach. We've got a number of people that won't be eligible, and it might be that we need to assist them with the plane ticket so that they can go back to their homeland. The other example of that is where you can provide incentives to private sector landlords. So it's all about moving the people on. So we've got a duty under the requirement to provide accommodation. But just to put some context in relation to the number that are placed, out of the 31 people that we currently have, so we've got 20 in B&B, 7 in our own stock, 3 in Mill House, which is part of the rough sleepers pathway that we're part of anyway, to try and reduce the number of rough sleepers, and 1 on an emergency bed that we pay for out of our prevention grant. Of the 31, 14, there's only 14 that we actually owe a duty to. And again, of those, the remainder, there's 4 that wouldn't even be able to get accommodation through the council, because then they haven't got a Part 6 through the legislation to be able to be eligible. So there's lots of things that we have to look at in relation to the type of accommodation that could be used. There are issues with landlords not wanting to take the cohort that we're trying to house, and they want guarantees. So again, we're trying to work with landlords to understand the incentives. So that's the first pot of money. The second pot of money is 161 million, which is capital and revenue. The capital is to purchase or lease properties, and this is about leaving a legacy. So any funding that we got through this route, anybody placed in this accommodation would only be able to have a tenancy for 2 to 3 years, after which time they'd need to be moved on from there, and then it would be utilised for other rough sleepers going forward. The revenue funding we can use to assist, to help support people and help them through that move on process. The number of cases we've got are very complex, and likewise with our partners across the county. So we are again looking at a capital bid. We've had since the 18th of July, and we've got till the 20th of August to get this bid in place. And again, with the capital spend, that has to be completed by the 31st of March. The revenue funding is for a 4-year period, but there will be another round of possible capital money coming forward. I hope I haven't gone into too much detail, and I hope that answers the question, but it is very complicated. Thank you.
It's just... Sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, thanks for that. No, that was a very full answer. That was excellent, and it looks like everything's in hand. Thank you very much.
Obviously, these sound like huge amounts of money, but they are shared between Leicestershire. Are they, Alison?
No, this is nationally. And
so it's nationally.
If you look at the figures, there's 15,500 people that have been taken in when we had to get everybody in. Of those, only 3,500 fall into 12 areas that are outside of London. So there is a separate, although the money is all one, there is a separate formula and form for London to complete. But if you think about the small amount of areas and actually co-producing a bid, probably more on a county-wide basis for some of the elements would obviously assist in us getting some funding to assist us with this huge amount of people that we need to house.
And of course, the 31st of March is 2021.
Yes, 2021.
Yeah, 2021. Okay, thank you very much. I have Rob Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Just really to put on record my thanks to the officers, Eileen for presenting tonight and capturing all of the work that's been done under that theme, and all the other officers that have been involved throughout. It's a really good reminder of the pace and scale and complexity of the issues. And I think when you consider that that is the community strand, when you then think that we were also dealing with some of the economic issues and the organisational issues, you can see just how much effort and work was required to ensure that the council was calm and assured and authoritative where it needed to be, but also collaborative, supportive, and indeed caring where it needed to be. And I think a couple of comments were made there about being proud. So I would like to, put on record that I am very proud of how we've reacted to the pandemic, both in terms of the response phase and the recovery phase. And I think, as you said, Chair, we aren't out of this yet. There is still a huge amount of work that's required and still a very uncertain future. But hopefully members feel reassured that we are handling things well, and that as far as we can be, we are on top of the issues that are coming to light and looking down the line as well. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question regarding the identified loneliness, and I think this would be for Eileen to answer. In Thurmaston, the same as it's the majority of the villages around Charnwood and indeed around England, there has been set up community groups to help. And one thing that we have noticed that it's combating loneliness. And people are very willing to share at the moment because we all seem to be in the same boat. That's the camaraderie feeling around there. And I would hate for that feeling to go and we get back to having isolated, lonely people in these villages. And I understand that data protection prevents councillors and community groups, some of them from finding out who those people are, but I think we need to reach out and try and get these lonely people afterwards when things have calmed down a little bit more than it is now, and to see if we've got any future to be able to develop these community groups to ensure that they stay and they look after the vulnerable on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Julie Robinson might be able to assist with that answer.
Thank you.
I was nodding away.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, we're very conscious of that in terms of the hub and working with lots of VCS organisations and helping them to continue. The VCS development officers have been working with a wide range of organisations to understand what their plans are going forward and how they might be assisted in terms of funding or help them, because things groups sprang up really quickly. So perhaps to get them more constituted and formalised so that they can apply for funding and signpost them and direct them. And obviously the closing date's just gone for the VCS COVID-19 recovery grant. So we reshaped our grants to enable organisations to be able to apply for that. And then obviously working with other organisations like Age Concern and Age UK, who've also got befriending schemes for certain people, and the befriending has been put in place at John Storer House. They've taken on that as well. So we are making sure there is support there for lonely people where they need to be signposted to.
Thank you very much. And there's another note that I made somewhere on one piece of paper, and it was on your community hub summary that you gave on the presentation that you didn't give me. I know it was Eileen. You've got additional support. Did you identify any particular trend or any surprise on there that you'd sort of got a whole section just on additional support? So I dare say it was a bit of this and a bit of that, but was there a particular trend, something that we're missing?
Julie again, Chair, please.
Chair, in terms of that line on the table, that was in the Loughborough Against Corona section. So
right.
In terms of working with them about what was their remit, and if they came across somebody who needed additional support, they would signpost them back to the hub, and then we'd make sure that they got appropriate support. So it might be social services, but things was to do like hard of hearing or visually impaired. So we were talking to other organisations about how we might be able to provide things in a different format. So it was just identifying and make sure appropriate signposting was put in place or safeguarding.
Okay. Right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from any other councillors, please? Well, again, I'd like it to be noted that I think it's a tremendous piece of work. It shows the commitment that Charnwood have of looking after its residents and looking after just the whole of the residents, not just the ones that are housed by Charnwood. And I think it's very commendable what you've done. So thank you very, very much. Thank you. Right, I'd like to go on to now item 7, pre-scrutiny scrutiny financial matters considered by the Cabinet, and there are no financial matters to be considered by the Cabinet. Item 8 is Cabinet items for pre-decision scrutiny. The following items have been identified for pre-decision scrutiny from the Cabinet agenda of the 13th of August 2020. And that item was the Leisure Centre contract recovery. This item is an exempt report and will be considered under item 12. I'd like to move on now to item 8B, options for the 2020 Loughborough Remembrance Parade, Loughborough Fair, Loughborough Christmas Lights Switch On and Town Hall promotions. This is on page 60 of your agenda. I'd like to ask Councillor Boker and Sylvia Wright to introduce the report. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, I've produced a few slides which I thought would be helpful. If it's possible to display those. Councillor Baker, did you want to say anything before I went through the slides?
No, I think it's more important for you to go through the detail. However, I would add that this is obviously been a very difficult decision to basically cancel most of these events, and it is all down to the fact that we just cannot compete with the COVID guidance in putting these events on, and it's not of our desire to spoil everybody's Christmas, but because there is just no way we can have them. So over to Brenda.
And Sylvia.
Thank you,
Not
Chair.
Brenda. Sylvia.
I knew who you were talking about. Okay, well, the Cabinet report focuses on the recommendations, reasons and proposals for the large events that are listed below. Next slide, please. Obviously, as Councillor Boker has suggested, we wanted to make sure we delivered an alternative Christmas and Fair and didn't just cancel it, but we still need to meet the COVID-19 secure guidance. There is an event safety advisory group that we held for these events, and particular concern was raised about, especially for the fair, no controlled entry, how we would achieve social distancing and evacuation. So all our current plans as they stand wouldn't actually work within the COVID secure guidance. So as I said, this report focused mainly on large events, but the same considerations would apply to some of the smaller events, e.g. the Diwali light switch on, where you would have if we had a ceremony, it would cause a gathering. So if we go into the next slide. So what we do need to do now is basically, the report is about taking decisions now so we can do things properly and safely. These decisions do involve people who did give their lives to protect our country, so we need to be particularly sensitive in terms of how we manage things like the Remembrance Day parade. We still need to ensure we can deliver Christmas because it's important, very important, more than ever, that to our businesses and residents that we can still encourage people into the town centre safely. What the report sets out to do is to deal with all the uncertainty and make sure that we have health and well-being at the forefront of our decision making. We're looking at reducing our risks while finding alternative options. We have no choice with the Pantomime because the figures don't stack up, and also safety, but it doesn't stop us using the old auditorium for potentially kind of cabaret style seating arrangements that potentially we could that we're currently looking at developing some options on that. Okay, and next slide. So just to run through each event very quickly. So Loughborough Fair, it's impossible for it to happen in its usual format. We're not looking at any large or adult rides, but we do think it's important that we actually mark the 799th year of the Royal Charter Fair. And so we're thinking of a few children's rides, so you're not kind of generating loads of students to the town centre when the fair is normally programmed, and maybe just having a few kiosks. So it will be highly managed. Obviously, the reason why we can't deliver the fair is because we can't support the social distancing. And we did look at options to reduce the size of the fair, e.g. kind of taking maybe the Granby Street car park and looking at putting some rides on there. But that wasn't feasible with the resources we have available either. So by marking the ceremony this year, what we want to do is to also start to focus on the 800th anniversary next year, and we have got some research going on with our local history groups at kind of tracing a lot of the history of the fair. So we will be doing something for the 800th year and really trying to make a focus on making sure we do that well. Okay, next slide. So Remembrance Sunday, it became quite apparent quite early on that a parade wouldn't be possible, and we've already confirmed, and groups have already confirmed to us that they weren't planning to attend the ceremonies. There's also national guidance out there, and basically they're advising their members about not supporting the parades. We have done some consultation on the proposal for a small scale event ongoing, and what we're looking at is a ceremony with limited numbers that we can manage. And obviously what the key essentials people are saying to us, it's being able to have the prayers, the last post, the wreath laying, and the cascade of poppies are all very important to those who normally attend. In order to allow people not attending to still be there and still, to still be involved, we're planning for online coverage and particularly live coverage and more social media. So there's a working group that are currently working on that at the moment. Next slide. The Christmas light switch on ceremony event again has been cancelled. The reason why we have to cancel it now is that if we don't, we would be liable for infrastructure costs. Obviously, we need to avoid a large number of people coming together at a specific time. So the proposal that we have is to switch the lights on early in the day and have a special Christmas market that could potentially be held over 4 days. So we've not got a spiked event, and we can manage the markets and plan for markets, because we have successfully returned Loughborough Market, and we know how to do those now in COVID conditions. So Christmas in Loughborough can still be promoted, but it will be without the light event. Next slide. A town hall pantomime. We've been planning Aladdin, basically the plans for the pantomime go on all year round. So there's already been a lot of work on Aladdin. So we're planning to move our production to 2021. A timely decision is important, so we avoid any unrecoverable costs, and it's about now that the production Little Wolf will be starting to recruit the actors and recruit the whole team of people that would be delivering. So that's why we've included pantomime in this report. As I say, we are looking at alternative use of the auditorium over that festive period, so we can still bring people to the town centre. And just to give you a bit of background information, I looked up on the 5th of August on stage how many pantomimes have already been cancelled across the country, and we're not on our own. There's 44 pantomimes have already been postponed, but we're expecting more or less very few to go ahead, and it's probably only the big venues that can accommodate maybe the social distancing. Okay, what I would say about the pantomime as well, it's as much about the cast, so we might spend an enormous amount of money on putting the panto on, and it only takes one member of the cast to be affected, and the whole thing falls apart. So I hope that gives an idea of the thinking behind the report and the kind of work that's going on. It's not just about cancelling our events; it's about completely rethinking and providing alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sylvia. Thank you. And as you say, you know, it is sad to have to do this, but it's a necessary thing. And as long as they're postponed and working towards the next years. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to again just say what a good report that is, and it is sad that these things are having to be postponed. But I think the importance here is they are being postponed, and alternatives are being looked at. I mean, with regards to the pantomimes, I mean, it is also the big venues around Nottingham and Birmingham that are also cancelling as well. There've been quite a few of those, so it is unfortunately inevitable. But I think to put the plans in for next year, which is good. Also, the Remembrance services to have online alternative, so people can see what's see a small ceremony and can see it live, which I think online is becoming the new norm at the moment. So that's a good report. So we just have to do what we have to do at the moment, unfortunately.
Thank you, Councillor Grimley. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think we agree there's a kind of sad inevitability about this. I want to particularly thank the officers who have clearly done a lot of creative thinking about what we can actually do to mark these events in some sort of kind of manageable way. I've got a simple question about process, though. Obviously, this is something that people are, the residents will be keenly interested in. But in terms of kind of the governance process, it was published. This proposal was published in, I think, our Charnwood's website on the 31st of July, before a decision had formally been taken. What was the logic in actually publishing the proposal rather than waiting till the 13th to publish the decision? I just wondered what was the logic behind that.
Sylvia.
Through the chair, thank you. I think basically we were having an awful lot of comments, inquiries, and there's also consultation that was going on, and we were kind of being put under quite a lot of pressure to actually respond. And we thought that rather than kind of get a negative, every Christmas is cancelled, we wanted to make sure we could get a positive message out as well by kind of looking at, well, we are looking at alternatives. You know, these things are having to happen, because once you start to consult and engage people in what potentially could happen, obviously there's a lot of people out there that are actually you know, involved in the journey as it is now. Does that help?
No, that clarifies. I can realise if people know you're consulting on it, they'll just say everything's cancelled, and so you're trying to manage expectations. Okay, that clears things up for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Something that was mentioned a couple of times was we'll try to use the space where the panto would have been to organise additional events. And I just wondered, and this is probably way too early to ask the question, but I just wondered, do you have any idea of what the lead time might be of actually organising alternative events? And any thoughts on what the projected income from those events might be?
Chair, I'm really sorry, I couldn't actually audibly hear that.
I think Councillor Bolton was saying you've for the auditorium, you've got in mind several alternative events, and I think the question was what would be the financial implications of this and the possible outcomes.
Thank you.
Is that right, Councillor Bolton?
Partially. It was also, what would the lead time be to actually organise these events? Because we're getting towards the middle of August.
Yes.
Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you. Yes, if I come back on that. Obviously, if we do, I mean, you've all experienced mermaking where we actually retract all the seats, and we're looking at models at the moment where you actually basically can book a table, so you can actually do the track and trace. And it might mean that we look at something along the line of rather than having Christmas parties, because that wouldn't be acceptable either, but we could potentially look at having some activity where people book tables and pre-order drinks, meals, entertainment. Obviously, we need to make sure that it wouldn't be at any additional cost. So those calculations are currently being worked out, and the team are actually looking at these kind of ideas and what would be feasible. But at the moment, that it's very much in its early stages, just so we can have something ready. I mean, the beauty of that is that the town hall do have a very large email reach and blast. They've got and they can get messages out. So as soon as, if it is feasible and it is kind of financially possible, then we would look to kind of get that information out as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask about the pantomime. I think on one of your slides I saw that 95% of the tickets have been sold already. Have you had a positive response to the cancellation and that they will postpone it to next year?
Sorry, Chair, I think I've slightly misled you. What?
No, it was me reading it.
What I would say is that obviously the pantomime, we normally attract circa 1,000 people, and that normally we sell 94% of the tickets for the actual pantomime. That is an extremely high capacity figure, but if you can see, the business model is based on a high capacity audience attendance, and I think part of that is due to the fact that obviously Little Wolf are performing really well. They're one of the top performing panto companies in the country, and they have received a 5-star rating from Stage 5 years running. So people tend to kind of book the next pantomime based on the previous experience. We do have tickets sold for this year. It isn't as many as we would normally sell at this point in year, and for the tickets already sold, we'll be asked people would they want to hang on to their tickets for next year. It does seem kind of a big ask, but what I would say is that we've had obviously we've been cancelling shows now since March, since the government recommendation to close the theatre, and we've had very few people wanting their funding back. They've actually agreed to have their ticket transferred to the following year. So a lot of the programme that can go ahead, that can be deferred, it has been deferred. But it is a lot of work and a very complex process for the staff involved.
Yeah.
And but I think that I'm hoping that people have already bought tickets. We'll just have those banked in the bank, ready for next year.
Well, that's a testimony to the town hall's success in the past, isn't it? That they're prepared to hang on in there and do it. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you, Sylvia. Are there any other questions for Sylvia? No? Okay, thank you very much. Right, right, now go, so I'll refer to my script now. I'd like to ask the committee if they support the recommendations set out in the report and the head of leisure and culture, and those recommendations are on page 60 of the agenda. And I would like to, do you want me to read the recommendations out?
Madam
No,
Chair,
Chair.
just clarify, the recommendations with reasons are set out on page 60, and I can see that no members have indicated, so I would suggest that means that that the members are in support of the recommendations, and the comments and observations that have been made this evening can be put into the minutes and the report that goes to Cabinet on Thursday night.
Right. Do you want me to ask the councillors individually or take it as a whole?
Take it as a whole for this item.
Okay, thank you, councillors. Right, I'd like to go on to item now, which is pre-decision scrutiny and the Cabinet response. I'd ask Karen Widdowson to introduce the report to note. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. This report is set out on page 69 of the agenda papers and is essentially a report to note the recommendations that were submitted to the Cabinet at the last meeting. So we had a meeting on the 6th of July, the Scrutiny Commission had a meeting on the 6th of July, and this report sets out the Cabinet's response, and it's purely for noting. Are there any questions? No, I'm going to say that there's no questions, and so the matter can be noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Item 10, Scrutiny Commission Work Programme, which is on page 71. Karen Widdowson will introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the Scrutiny Commission Work Programme is item 10. There's a couple of matters I need to refer members to. So initially, Appendix 1, that sets out the current work programme, and as set out in the report, it concentrates on the Scrutiny Commission. Now that the Scrutiny committees have been put on hold, the Scrutiny Commission is focusing on the recovery cells. So we've heard from the Economic Recovery Cell at the last meeting. This evening we've had the Community Recovery Cell report, and then for the next meeting there'll be the Organisational Recovery Cell. I have had some members suggest that some of the focus of the Organisational Recovery report covers some of the IT support, so if that can be minuted as so we can pick that up for the next report that comes to the next meeting. Also going forward, the work programme is going to look at the relationship between the Scrutiny Commission and the Audit Committee. I understand that a meeting between the Chair, Councillor Seaton, and the Chair of the Audit Committee, which is one of our independent members, Bev Angel, is going to be set up, and that's going to be based on guidance that the Centre for Public Scrutiny has written. So that is in the pipeline, and we look forward to receiving a report back in due course about how that relationship can be strengthened. Another particular matter which is for action for me is to promote the questions under Scrutiny Procedure 11.16. So in the Constitution at the moment we have the questions on notice, and there should be, the Centre for Public Scrutiny is saying that we should be encouraging more residents and ward councillors to put forward questions relating to the COVID-19 response. So I will be working with the communications team to enhance that provision that's in our Constitution already. And then Appendix 1 also just sets out the work programme. I have no comments to make. The work programme is there, and if there's anything that any members wishes to add to that work programme, to let me know. The other matter I need to raise as well is Appendix 2 sets out the pre-decision scrutiny items. So this is the list of key decisions going forward to the Cabinet meetings. You've already identified the Public Space Protection Order, and that's due to go to the 14th of September Scrutiny Committee. So there may be some other ones that members may have seen in that list in Appendix 2. And then the final matter that I need to make reference to is regarding the budget scrutiny process for 2021-22. The Scrutiny Commission need to make a formal resolution relating to that budget scrutiny process this evening, because at the Corporate Services Scrutiny Committee on the 4th of March, the committee recommended to the Scrutiny Commission, minute number 34, resolution 5 refers, that the council draft budget for 2021 be undertaken the same as the previous year, as in through a budget scrutiny panel, and that panel also monitors the outcomes of this year's panel report. So I do need a resolution from the Scrutiny Commission this evening to recommend that the budget scrutiny panel be set up. It's the only scrutiny panel that will be set up. And also I need to have not full membership, but I would like to see appointment of a chairman at this meeting as well. By tradition, the chair would be the chair of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Commission. So I'll leave that to you. So there's a couple of matters that I wanted to raise there. Thank you.
I think I'm back on now. So you would like a resolution tonight for that then? I can't hear you now.
Yes, in relation to the budget scrutiny panel, I would like a resolution for the members to say that they would like to follow the same process as in previous years, essentially, because it was raised at the Corporate Services Committee back in March, and it's something that we need to tie together. It's with the pandemic. Thank you.
So how do I do that? How do we do that? Do I resolve then that we need to follow the normal practices as we've done before with the Budget Committee? And I would like the other councillors to resolve that also.
Yeah, if they can agree, do a roll call just to check that they are in agreement with that scrutiny.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
In agreement, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Brooks is not here. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Agreed.
Councillor Harsh-Nicolau.
Thank you, Chair. Agreed.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. And I agree also, obviously. So thank you very much.
And also, can I just point out that it would be ideal to have a chair appointed as well. So we do have the chairman of the Corporate Services in attendance, actually, Councillor Hajai-Nicolau. I don't know if he's in agreement with being the chairman of that budget scrutiny panel.
Councillor Nicolau, are you in agreement to that?
I am in agreement, Chair. Thank you very much. I'm very honoured.
Thank you.
Are there any other members that may wish to sit on that scrutiny panel?
Councillor Bolton, I think you showed interest.
I did. I sat on it last year, and I think it's really good to have that continuity. So I would be interested in doing it. I'm sorry, Chair, did you ask Councillor Hamilton whether he was in support of this?
All right, yeah.
You're correct, I didn't. Councillor Hamilton.
Chair, I support.
Now a screwdriver could have gone in the works then, or is it a spanner?
Thank you, that's very helpful. And after this meeting, the Democratic Services team will be in touch to start the ball rolling with identifying dates and setting out the process. Thank you. So the next matter is in the work programme. Is there anything else that any members wish to add to the work programme or change in any way?
If before the next, well before the next meeting, if you identify anything from the key decisions to be made in the future, will you please get in touch with Karen or myself to discuss whether it should be, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, the next item is item 11, and this is an exempt item, and I propose to exclude members of the public from the meeting during the consideration of the following item on the grounds that it will involve the likely disclosures of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act in 1972. And it is considered that the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I would like a seconder, please.
Chair, Councillor Hamilton here. I second this proposal.
Thank you. I would like to ask each person whether they are for or against this proposal. Councillor Bolton.
For, Chair.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. For.
This time I can actually miss out Councillor Hamilton. Councillor Ransom.
I'm for, Chair. Thank you.
And myself, I'm for as well. And Councillor Harsh-Nicolau.
For, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the outcome is that it is an exempt item and public are removed from this meeting.